Morning. It's nice to see you all together here after 2 long days of meeting you all individually. All of us, including the defense team in this church, owe you a great deal of gratitude. So thank you for agreeing to be the jurors on her trial. This trial has been a long time coming. This is her date in court. You are her jurors. And as the clerk, when she swore you in, eloquently said, you are her country. Now, you've all set aside your lives and all the important things that you're doing to come here every day on our schedule, to sit patiently, to listen, to keep an open mind, to evaluate evidence, to deliberate when the time comes, and to reach a verdict. And no matter what that verdict is, we all owe you the same debt of gratitude. But I suggest the verdict will be not guilty. Now, the evidence that's going to come in over the next 2.5 weeks is a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. It's not all on a timeline. Witnesses come in and testify, documents get introduced, photographs get introduced, videos get played, audios get heard. And each piece of evidence represents, or is similar to, a piece of the puzzle that the prosecution is trying to put together. And you, at the end of the day, are going to decide, do the pieces fit the way they say or not? Are there pieces they try to jam in that don't fit? And are there pieces that do fit but are the wrong color or otherwise don't make sense? And that's why it's essential to keep an open mind throughout the whole process until you get a good look at the entire puzzle that is this case. Now, Judy Church, way over here. You've all had barely a chance to look at her. She comes before you now, 67 years old. She was then, in 2022, 64 years old. You will learn that she's originally from Bedford, Massachusetts, that she's one of 4 sisters, that her father, Donald, was a Navy man and a firefighter, that her mother, Jean, was a mom and a bookkeeper for the Blue Ribbon Dairy. You will learn that Judy went to high school and graduated, worked as a waitress, and put herself through college. And that she eventually went to, got a degree, a bachelor's degree in education from Framingham State College. In 1988, she got a job as a school teacher at the Howe Manning Elementary School. In 1988, as a 3rd grade teacher. She taught in the 3rd grade for 1 year, and then she taught in the 4th grade for 30 years in a row. Same classroom, same school. And then she retired. Along the way, she got married. Her first husband, her only husband, Rusty. They had a son, Douglas. And in 2002, they moved to Salisbury, where this drama that is this trial starts to unfold, but not back then. They buy a house, and they move to Salisbury so Douglas could attend the Votech school. And they live together as a family, and they grow up, and they continue on. In 2012, Judy is 54 years old. Leroy Fowler comes onto the scene. He's 45 years old. He's a loose friend of the family. Rusty likes to ride motorcycles. Leroy likes to ride motorcycles. Judy likes to ride on the back of motorcycles. And they get to know each other through that circumstance. Leroy is in a relationship at that time with a woman named Julie Hawkins, mother of Michael Hawkins, who's a witness in this case. And Julie Hawkins is also described as like a second mother to Leroy Jr. So Leroy has this family, Julie Hawkins, Leroy his son, and Michael Hawkins, his stepson. But he leaves that family, and he looks for a place to live, Leroy. And he becomes a tenant at the home of Judy Church and Rusty. And this is where the relationship between Judy Church and Leroy Fowler starts to happen, comes to fruition. They start out as friends. They're in the same place. He's a lot younger, as you've heard. And he rides a motorcycle, and at that time he's a construction worker, and he's a vibrant guy, and he represents some youth to Judy. They start hanging around, too much, maybe, and then they fall in love, and a romance blossoms. Judy's still living in the house with her husband, and Leroy is in the house with them in a different unit. Husband Rusty finds out, and Judy and Leroy leave the house. Judy leaves her marriage. She's in love with Leroy Fowler, and she's going to give up her old life in search of something a little younger, a little newer, a little more exciting, something that's enticing. Now, this starts what I would suggest is a honeymoon phase between the two. And that lasts for a while. What do? They buy a house. Actually, Judy buys a house. 108 Central Ave in Salisbury. And they move in together. And it's a fixer-upper. It's where this all happens. Judy and Leroy eventually move into the top floor. Douglas, Judy's son, moves into the bottom floor. And there's a cottage with some tenants in the back. These tenants don't really have any factual connection to this case. But there they are. And Judy and Leroy build a life together, a new life, and it's exciting. And they have fun. They go on motorcycle rides. They buy a dog together named Salt, who joins the other dog already owned by Leroy. They work on this fixer-upper all the time, and it's its own entity within their lives. And things are good. And it takes a while to get that all done. It takes about 3 years. And then someone comes on the scene that dramatically changes that. And the honeymoon period comes to an end. Leroy Fowler meets a woman named Barbara Randall. Barbara Randall is younger than Judy by almost 5 years, and he begins an affair with Barbara Randall. He starts to see her on the side. Judy finds out about it, and she is heartbroken, and she is angry at Barbara and at Leroy. And she wants Leroy to stop. But he doesn't. He refuses to stop. And so what emerges, and this is now in 2017, 2018, okay? Years earlier than 2022, where Leroy Fowler dies. What emerges in 2018 is a love triangle that Leroy Fowler has stuck these two women in, and neither one of them like it, and neither one of them like each other. Judy refers to Barbara as the C word. Barbara refers to Judy as grandma. Constantly, whenever she's talking and texting with Leroy, why don't you go home with grandma if you don't want to be with me? Leroy would. And so he creates this dynamic that goes on for years with these two women. Neither one of them want it. But he imposes it on them. And over time, they accept it. And those journal entries, and that anger in the phone and in the journals, many of those were written in that era. When Judy was really mad, and she would pick up the pen or get on her phone, and to channel her anger, she would put it all into those places. get it out of her system. I hate you, I'm mad at you, whatever it said. That's a good place to do it. But then every time Leroy came home, she took him back. Now, over time, her plan became, I'm going to be the last woman standing. I taught in the same classroom for 30 years. I'm not leaving this guy who I love. I'm not giving up on him, even though it hurts, even though I don't like it. And so she decides, I'm sticking this through. And this goes on for years. And in fact, Leroy always comes back. And he lives with Judy. That's who he lives with. And over time, that bizarre love triangle kind of normalizes. It's not good. Leroy might like it, but Judy and Barbara don't like it. But it gets accepted. Until 2022. 2022 is the exact opposite of what the prosecution has tried to lay out for you and is the backbone of their case. 2022 is really the year for Judy because Leroy is getting tired of Barbara and he's getting ready to leave her. And he's going to stay with Judy. And we know this because in 2021 in December, they get in Judy's Jeep and they drive together to Florida. They're both getting older now. Leroy's health isn't doing so good. You heard references to pacemakers. He's got other issues coming on the scene. He's not doing great. He's out of work now. He's on SSDI. Got some food stamps. So he's not the young guy he was, the swashbuckler on the motorcycle when he first met Judy. But he's her guy. So they drive to Florida and they shop for a home. See if they can find a house to live. They're going to move and get a new start on life and leave Salisbury and leave drugs and leave alcohol and leave other things and leave Barbara behind and give it a new go. Build a new house like the first house they built. See if they get the little magic of the honeymoon period back. And Judy buys them a house. She buys them a house, which is a trailer house. She pays cash out of her savings, $111,000. And she puts it in his name. That's the guy she hates and wants to kill. She puts that house in his name and they buy it. And they live in that house in Florida in 2022, January, February, and March. Right? And they live there. And they make a plan to come back to this Florida house that they called their Forever house. And Judy also bought Leroy a truck, a black Dodge Ram truck, new to him, used for $13,000, and put it in his name so that he could have that to help them move back and forth. The house was in both their names. Both their names, right? This is their dream. Now, they get back to Salisbury, and of course the plan is to get organized and get back down to Florida. You arrive here in New England in the spring, it leads to the summer, and they're still sort of dallying with this idea. There's this plan to go, but the plan doesn't get quite put in motion. But it's still a plan. So throughout the spring, into the summer, it's still a plan between Judy and Leroy to go. And then the plan becomes to go that weekend that Leroy dies. So, on November 5th, 2022, Leroy sends a text message to Barbara. He breaks up with her, says it's over. I'm packed, the trailer is packed, and I'm moving to Florida with Judy. That's November 5th, right? Judy has won, if it's a competition, right? Judy has her man at long last. She has the home they're going to go to, And they're going within days. It's just a matter of the final packing arrangements. Winter is coming, it's getting colder, and they're going to Florida to live. So how could her motive be to kill him then? They're stringing this motive from all kinds of stuff, little jokes taken out of context that are off color, old entries from journals, stray text messages, trying to cobble them together. But they don't fit. They don't fit. These two were going to Florida that weekend. So what happened on the early morning that Leroy died is he has a room that's sort of a man room on one end of the house. Judy's got the bedroom that's hers and his on the other end of the house, and the living space is in between. At some point in the early morning, Leroy, it's his birthday, comes down the hall to visit with Judy. They've been texting each other all night, even though they're not far away. And there's no animosity between them in those text messages. They're about sex. And he comes down the hall, and in the bedroom, he's not doing well, right? He starts to fall out of bed. He falls down. He's becoming less and less coherent. He's not looking good, and she's asking, "What did you take, Leroy? What did you take?" By this time, he's a cocaine addict, heavy user. He's also a Percocet abuser. And maybe other things. But she doesn't know, so she's saying, what did you do, Leroy? What did you take? And she's filming him for the purpose of educating him, for this is what you're doing to yourself, whatever it is. And on the film, she asks, "Can I call 911? Can I call 911? And eventually he says yes. And she does. She's the one who calls 911 and says, "My boyfriend ingested something," and she gives specific directions as to how to get into the house. Now, the EMTs arrive, and they observe Leroy and try to find out what happened. Here's something that Leroy doesn't say. He doesn't say, "She did something to me," or he doesn't say, "I've been poisoned." He says, "I took 10 Percocets. It doesn't seem from the labs that get them later like he did take 10 Percocets. At least they didn't seem to appear in his system. But the point isn't whether he took them or not. The point is, that's his time to say, "I think she did something to me." But of course he didn't do that, because she didn't do anything to him. And he knew it. Now what happens is, there's what emerges is what I'll loosely term a conspiracy theory. The police talk to Michael Hawkins, son of Julie Hawkins. They talk to Leroy Fowler's son, Leroy, Julie Hawkins' second son. They talk to Tammy Carbone. They talk to Barbara Randall, right? And then out of the woodwork, 2 years later, that friend who says he had a conversation in the bar with Judy, who said, "I'll poison him if he cheats on me," right? That's John Haywood. He comes forward 2 years later. He's Leroy's first cousin. These are the civilian witnesses you're going to hear from. And they all throw shade at Judy, right? They're all picking, "Oh, this piece of little evidence," or "She said this once," or "I have this text message," or "I swear Leroy said this to me," even though Leroy's not around, right? And this becomes the foundation of the prosecution case. These things. From these people. And they're admittedly hurt, angry, upset, confused, looking for answers. But they get the wrong answers by pointing the finger at her. And that gets demonstrated through the science and the math of this case. Basic science and basic math. Lawyers don't go to law school because they're good at math and science, right? So the police go eventually and they search Judy Church's home, and they find this bottle, which is not this exact bottle, but this is a replica of the bottle, okay? exact bottle should come in as an exhibit, as will many photographs. And it's a red Powerade fruit punch drink. It is known to be, by family members who tell the police, this is Leroy's, one of his favorite drinks. This is one of his favorite drinks. And it's in a clear plastic bottle, and in the bottom of it is not something that doesn't look right. In the bottom of it is something that's bright orange, a bright orange liquid. Bright orange liquid. In the bottle of what's in the bottom of what's supposed to be red powder. What they're trying to suggest is that Judy Church somehow slipped in this invisible, sweet-tasting ethylene glycol from antifreeze, and then he drank it all and didn't know it. Then came down the hallway and didn't know that he just drank something poison, even when he talked to the EMTs. That's what they're trying to suggest. Well, they're trying to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. So now there's this clear plastic bottle, supposed to have red fruit punch in it, his favorite drink, and it's got orange, something orange in it. The police sees it, they test it, right? And it comes back positive for ethylene glycol. Prosecutor referred to it as antifreeze. It's a common ingredient. And left to itself, that is a sweet-tasting ingredient, ethylene glycol, by itself. But there's a Massachusetts general law that requires that when these products are sold in Massachusetts, and there's others in other states, that antifreeze and other things that use ethylene glycol have to have a bittering agent in it to alert people, right? So if there's not an accidental consumption or something like that. Doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to chug it down if you were determined, but you would be alerted to its presence. They don't test for it. Ever. Even now. But the defense does. We hire a lab and say, hey, we have a test for this bittering agent. Was it in there? And they do the testing, and they find, yes, it was. The bittering agent was in substance. So now you've got the clear plastic bottle, supposed to have red liquid in it, has bright orange liquid in it, seems to have it, has the ethylene glycol in it from some source, probably antifreeze, and has the bittering agent. That's the basic science. Bittering agent is called denatonium benzoate. Now, the math of it is essentially that based on the amount of ethylene glycol in Leroy Fowler's blood, and based on the concentration of it in the sample, it appears that he would have had to have drank about 3 bottles of that stuff to put himself in the state that he was in. And that's just the math of it. So these are the questions that exonerate Judy Church. Now, what happened to Leroy? What happened to Leroy, right? Well, you guys might be in the best position of all to get good insight into that. You're going to hear from all these witnesses and get a chance to evaluate all the evidence. And you might figure it out, or have good ideas about it. Or you might not. You might not figure it out. Because that's not your mission. Your mission isn't to find out, well, what did happen to Leroy? Your mission is much narrower and much clearer. Have they proved beyond a reasonable doubt that she murdered him? That's your mission. Now, when Leroy died, so did all of Judy's dreams to go to Florida. So did many of her relationships, including a valuable one with Tammy Carbone, Leroy's sister-in-law, and other people. She got accused, and now she stands alone to defend herself. But Judy Church is not a murderer. She's a lot of things. She's a daughter, sister, a mom, teacher, an educator, an ex-wife, girlfriend, a bit of a fool, She's not a murderer. At the end of this trial, the defense will have another chance to address you all, and by then, the jigsaw puzzle will be finished. And it will be missing pieces, and at least one of those pieces is going to be the wrong color. Orange. Bright orange. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scully.